Well, welcome back to the Farmside Chat. This is Zippy Duvall, President of American Farm Bureau and host for the podcast today. Look forward to talking to you each time, and I hope that you look forward to all the different topics that we talk about. As you know, I travel America and talk to farmers and ranchers, which we call the grassroots of our organization, the power and strength of our organization, because when they're engaged, sometimes they can move mountains when it comes to policy. And I'm so appreciative of the work that they do. And today we have a great young Farm Bureau member with us, Nick Courville. Is that how I say it? Courville?
Yes.
Nick comes to us from Montana. We're going to talk about his ranch, but first off, I want to remind everybody that November is a time when we recognize our veterans. And all of us know the freedoms that we enjoy in this great country each and every day. They don't really come free. There's a lot of men and women for many, many years have paid a big sacrifice leaving their homes. Some paid the ultimate sacrifice that we might enjoy the freedoms that we have here in our country. And we never will ever be able to repay them for all that they've done for us as individuals, our communities, and our country. Start off with, Nick, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
Well, I appreciate the support.
Most people that know me know that I have a son that's in the military. He's a Black Hawk pilot. And actually, man, I don't look that old, but actually he's going to retire next May after 20 years of service. And I guess that might make me feel like or think about being old a little bit, but I don't feel old. And hope I don't look that old to have a son that's retiring before I do. So I understand from a dad's perspective of the sacrifice that men and women make when they serve our country, and the families, the sacrifice that they make. My son served in Iraq for 18 months and flew 119 combat missions. So I definitely understand that role that families play back at home. So Nick is a farmer and rancher from Montana. One of my favorite places in our great country that I've been able to go and visit, just a beautiful state. So Nick, tell us a little bit about where at in Montana are you, and introduce us to what your ranch looks like.
So we're in Western Montana. If you're not from here, it's the postcard side of the state. It's a lot prettier than Eastern Montana. We live right in the Mission Valley, the heart of the Mission Valley in Charlotte, Montana. So there's mountains all around us that you can see, and we're just kind of on a valley for about 3,200 feet. In elevation, we're just about 15 miles south of a giant freshwater lake, Flathead Lake, and then we're like an hour north of Missoula, which is like a big city to me, but it grows, ebbs and flows with the college kids moving in and out. Big university there for us in the University of Montana.
So tell us about your ranch. Cattle, what kind of cattle, and do you range on private land, or you range on BLM or National Forest land?
Well, we're all private, and then I grew up on a reservation, so we're on the Salish and Kootenai reservation. So we have some leases that are part of that, or owned by the tribe. We have ourselves, me and Randy bought our place in 21. It's 60 acres with a house, barn, stuff like that. It shares a fence line with my grandparents. They have a 40, and then that shares our fence line, then a 90 behind it. And then I have 2 or 3 different neighbors that I'll lease some ground from. It allows us, we do a rotational grazing with our cows. It's mostly Black Angus. There's some Hereford influence, and then we got a lot of Black Baldies that are coming out now from that breeding. And we do some direct market beef, but mostly we just sell on the truck. Weaning season coming up here in October. That's a big fall run for us. And we'll just sell locally at the sale barn, or if someone's needing something for a load. We don't quite have enough to make a pot load, so we just fit in where we can. And then my wife, we have 1 stud horse and then probably about 11 brood mares. And at any given time, there's probably 20 horses kicking around here. She's done a very successful training business. but you don't stay young forever. So we've kind of branched out into breeding and selling some foals throughout the year. And that's been pretty fun. We have a pile of horses kicking around, so that's been a good part of it too. And they
And do
probably make more
you,
money than the cows, but don't let her find that out. So
well, I hadn't had much experience with horses, but I know they eat a lot and require a lot of attention and don't pay a whole lot back. So
yeah, and it's the horse market's been pretty nuts right now. Even weanlings to started colts. Randy focuses on 30-day colts and sending them out just as started, not a finished horse at all. But the amount of money people are willing to spend on them the last couple of years has just been kind of nuts. They need a good horse or a kid's horse or a broke horse or an arena horse. I mean, there's all types, all kinds of what people are looking for.
yeah, it really is. And people that own horses just look at the world a little different sometimes, I think. So
Yeah.
do you enjoy the horses?
Yeah, I do. Like you said, they're probably more time than the cattle. And on our place, like stuff don't happen without my wife Randy being here because I'm on the road quite a few days a week being gone. So I mean, the horses require a little bit more time, but she pretty much handles that side of it. I'll trim a few, shoe a few, that kind of stuff when need be. But for the most part, she manages that whole side by herself. So
Yeah. So them black baldies, they're very attractive cows. I got a few in my herd, and
yeah.
they people seem to really like those cattle. Do they
Yeah,
fare well out at that 3,200 feet?
I think so. Yeah, pretty easy. We don't have to worry about any of the high altitude stuff that would be surrounding us, the PAP scores and stuff like that. But there's, I think, a higher demand that's coming for some of the Hereford influence lately. That crossbreed, I mean, getting a few extra pounds with that hybrid vigor, but then also I think the maternal side. I try to save if I can, if they fit my replacement heifer program. I try to save them if they got that white face on them the whole time. I think the maternal side that you get out of that's pretty good too.
Yeah. Now you just mentioned a score. What was it, Pat score?
Yeah, there's like a high altitude EPD out there on some of the Angus bulls mostly that I've heard of that they actually have to test that and make sure. I mean, to me, it sounds kind of like hardware disease or something like that. They'll just start
Yeah.
swelling up in their brisket. And that can be a problem for a lot of guys that run in the mountains or at a higher elevation than us. So that's becoming talked about more and more when guys are looking at bulls is that I think it's PAP. So high
Yeah.
altitude sickness or something like that.
Yeah, Nick, until I traveled out west, I'd never heard of that. I didn't know that they had to test the cattle to see if they could stand the high altitude. I figured the cow was all made the same, and it wouldn't make any difference. But you're exactly right. That's one of the things I learned as I traveled out there. What about water? What's the water look like on your? I know water is such a big issue out west. Tell us about the water on your farm.
Yeah, so I just was looking at our grazing map today. Last night I moved some cattle and there's no water left in that pasture, so we're gonna have to change some things up. Where we live is actually pretty convenient. There's a lot of like little pothole ponds that are around that we can water out of. But as far as stock water goes, it comes out of the irrigation project in the summer. So once you start irrigating, or if you need to order stock water, you can. And there's a map of just a number of ditches that have been out there dug in years ago that we flood irrigate on or that go to a pump for pivots and stuff like that. But water's a hot commodity here, and it's always a hot topic. And you kind of got to be careful on which side of the fence you're on, what group of people you're talking to. The water compact that we have between the tribe and the state, and even higher than that, I think, has been quite a few year process in trying to get figured out where water rights are going and what the tribe's going to give up to get this at home and maybe get some money to rebuild some of the project and things like that. But I think they say water's for fighting, whiskey's for drinking. So that's been true at home. So
Well, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was fixing to ask you about that saying.
yeah,
And on the eastern side of the country, like I am, we don't talk about those. Well, we are talking about them now, but until recently, we didn't talk about water and water rights. And but out west, that's been a big deal ever since we moved into the western part of the country. And
yeah,
most people don't have any idea between federal regulations and tribal regulations, municipality regulations, BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and National Forest. All those people are involved in regulating water and land out there, and really, really has a huge effect. Some positive, a lot negative to our farmers and ranchers out there. And I'm sure you have to listen to a lot of that.
Yeah, it's our lifeblood for sure. I mean, without it and without the irrigation project that we have, there's a lot of places that probably wouldn't be around. You know, a lot of dry land. We couldn't run as many cattle as we can. You couldn't irrigate the crops like we do now. So it's been a pretty big deal to make sure that that project stays in place.
So I know you also are a nutritionist consultant, but before we get into that part of your business, tell us a little bit about the forage that you do grow on there that you depend on that water for.
Yeah. So I don't do any crop stuff other than we put up enough hay to go in the barn, and then we keep enough small squares around for our Randy's training horses. So during her busy time, she's got about 5 horses in the barn that she's working with. Right now she has 7. So we'll put up enough hay in the summer just to fill the loft in the barn, and then probably about 1,000 bales or something is usually what we go through in a year. So we'll put up that just kind of pasture hay. It's nothing special, no alfalfa. If you walk through our pastures, we were lucky enough to have the Kansas Farm Bureau come through and do a tour, and they wanted to see horses and cattle, so they came to our place. And it was a pretty good compliment. One of the guys there was yearling operation and ran a rotational grazing system, so me and him hit it off about that. And one of the things he said is, I can't believe how clean your pastures are. There's no weeds, you know. And to me, they're dirty. We took him in a pretty nice one, right, to show off, but we got a lot of weed problems where we're at as far as like white top and things like that. But you know, brome grasses are pretty heavy in my pastures, and then we have a lot of clover just to try to get it to grow during what we call the hot season. You know, when it's 80s and 90s, our cool season grass is shut down, and they just started greening up again here as we get in August and September. It's cooling off. We're getting a little rain. They're starting to green up again, but when it gets that 80, 90, our grass shuts off unless you have something like the legume, alfalfa, clover, or something like that to take its place. So
let's talk a little bit about your nutrition consulting side of your business. Tell our listeners what you might do in a day doing that.
Yeah, so and that's not really like another business entity for us. That's my day job. So I travel. I have the western half of the state. There's 5 of us that work for the company I work for. And our job when I started was mainly beef nutrition, cattle nutrition. But it's grown into like your lifestyle animals, goats, sheep, chickens, everything. My focus has still mainly been on cattle nutrition, mostly cow-calf pairs, but there's more feedlots that are popping up. So we're doing a lot more TMRs, a lot of ration building, things like that. My typical day, I have a group of dealers that I service. So I'll show up. We'll just tell them I'm coming Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You line me out with where we're going. I'll either be pulling hay samples, silage samples, things like that. We'll go back 2 weeks later whenever we get those, and we'll start to put rations together for those guys. They give us some goals they want to shoot for or something like that, and we'll try to make that happen for them. And then sometimes when it gets, you know, in the heat of the battle, when we're in feed season and stuff like that, it's more of getting called out to a place because they're having a problem. So we try to help them work through that, whether it be a respiratory deal, a hoof health deal, some sort of sickness, or the cattle just ain't gaining where they want them to be, or we need to get them ready for calving season. That's a lot of what we end up doing. But like I said, it's turned into a lot more lifestyle. There's a lot of people moving in, or it's kind of changed the demographic of the animals that we have around here. Everyone has 40 acres and 10 cows, and it used to be a lot bigger places, and now it's a lot of smaller places that are broke up. So even my role outside of work has changed from that. So
yeah. So did you mention the company you work for?
It's CHS, a co-op, and our brand is Feed, CHS Inc. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a co-op. Yeah. Most of those feeders, what size are they? How many head most of you think?
When we get them, or when we get to put them in the feedlot, we do a lot more backgrounding. There's not a lot of finish lot. So when I get them, you know, we'll start out at 600-pound calves and we'll take them to 800. I get a lot of people that just want grass calves, where they'll buy light calves in the sale barn, and we'll put a pound and a quarter on them all winter, and then they turn them out when the grass is ready in May, April, things like that. So my typical is probably like 400 to 800 pounds is what I'm feeding out. Just a lot of more background and lots, not a lot of finish going on here. So
Yeah. Okay. Um, people don't realize how many different really levels of where a beef cow is, of what stage they are at before they get to the harvesting point, which we call a fed cow. But that, just like my calves that left this week, they were 675 to 750, and they were going to go to a feedlot to be fed there for probably 150 days. I think that's about the time, and then they'll be
yep.
finished and on to be harvested. So, and that animal would be year and a half, 2 years old, at that time. So a lot of people don't really realize that they change hands that many times. They come here, go to a feeder, or it could be background somewhere into a feeder and then on to the harvesting place. And lot of different levels in this industry. And the closer you get to finishing, the more concentrated it is, because we're down
Yep.
to about 4 packers across the country, big packers that do 80% of the harvesting. So, and a lot of times that's not a good thing for our industry, for the concentration of everything to be so confined to just a limited amount of people or companies. So the beef industry is a lot more complicated than what people think it is. They definitely think you
Yep.
just get a cow, she has a calf, and a year later you harvest it. It's not that easy, is it?
No, no. And yeah, we get to work with different places every day with a different problem or different goal. So yeah, we get to see a lot of that.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that I want to go back and talk about your military side. Tell us a little bit about your military service.
Yeah, so I don't it's kind of one of them things talking about the egg. Uh Working for my dad, the only way to come back to the ranch is to come back with a college degree. So when I left for the military, we were having a conversation in the barn. It was probably January. We were on break from college. And I just said, it's not working for me. I think I want to come home. And he said, you know the rules. You got to come back with a degree. And I said, well, I'm meeting with the recruiter on Monday, and left shortly after. So that's how my career started. Was I just decided school wasn't for me at that time. Went to the military, was trying to hold out for some schools to get right out of basics, such as airborne, things like that, and ended up getting them. So it was good, but I was just trying to get a better contract than what most go in, just as a, you don't really know where you're going. But I thought with some of that I'd end up in infantry, or things like that I wanted to do. I ended up serving about 4 years regular Army at the same post. I was out of Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is a training unit. This only standalone airborne battalion in the Army. It's kind of unique. It's a training unit where units that are getting ready to deploy and go overseas, they come to us for 2 to 3 weeks, and they get graded on how they did this mission or how effective were they here, and things like that. So every time they came, we would have a signature that we had to portray, whether it was friendly forces that they had to train up. We called that green. Or it was red, where they'd put us out in the woods for 3 weeks and say, we need you guys to attack this little village every day or whatever. They'd give us a signature that they wanted us to portray, because they knew where those units were going. So I mean, for me, being out in the woods 3 weeks at a time, it was kind of like growing up like a little boy. I loved it. It's just 4 years out there was a long time. A lot of people didn't like the training unit aspect of it. A lot of the people that were there had been in the Army, been overseas, and been there a lot longer than me. So it was a unique dynamic to be fresh out of basic training and head that way, I thought. But I enjoyed it. We spent a lot of time in the field. Like I said, I think the longest time I spent out in the field without going back was like 28 days. Just for a training unit, that felt like a long time, right? The people overseas were there for a lot longer, but that was kind of our typical rotation, was 2 to 3 weeks. When we'd get back and there wasn't a lot of downtime, they'd send us to a lot of schools, just because they know our time in the field was pretty boring. So they'd send us to whatever schools if they had slots open. Got to enjoy quite a few schools in the military. That translated to the job I had there. Not so much civilian world, but a lot of what I was doing in the infantry. So
Yeah. So I know that there are a lot of life lessons learned in the military. Are there any life lessons that translated that you could use each and every day in the farming industry, ranching?
Yeah, I mean, long hours, that's one that people, you just used to working long hours, whether it be military, at home on the farm, or get done with your 9 to 5 and then have to go do chores at home. That's typical for me. So that's been nice work ethic. A lot of it came from growing up, but a lot of it also came from being in the military and just you have to get some things done and they give you a deadline to do it. So that's translated into my 9 to 5 a lot too. Is setting deadlines, working backwards off that timeline to plan things. So backwards planning. And then the other one I think is just working with people from all walks of life, right? We don't get to pick who we work with, but we have to be successful whether we're doing it. And that was in the military. You just got thrown with a group of guys. You'd get to know each other very well. And at work and at home, sometimes you might not like working with that person or something, and you have to just get around that. So just working with everybody and trying to make things work was a big one. Yeah, I don't know if that's really what you were asking for, but
Yeah.
that was a big one for me, was just being able to work with people and get around your differences to get something done.
That's, I left the farm here at age 50 after milking cows for 30 years and entered as a president of Georgia Farm Bureau. And all of a sudden I was working with 1,200 people at Georgia Farm Bureau and ended up at American Farm Bureau working with 110 there. And, everybody around town has, a lot of them have big egos, but that's a big part of life, is trying to figure out other people's personalities and knowing that you're not going to change their opinion about something, but trying to figure out how you can work with them to accomplish something. So I would say that's a real important lesson to learn. Yeah.
The other
It's
one
it's not an easy one at all. It's not
no.
easy.
Yeah, but find that middle ground where you can come together and get something done versus just shutting down and not working together, I think is important too. So
Yep. Yep. That's what we work at here in Washington, D.C. all the time, is trying to get people to come away from their extremes and come to the middle and find solutions to problems that we have. When you went to the military, I'm assuming from hearing your story, you knew you was going to go back home at some point in time and go into the ranching, or did you?
well, when I got to the military, I enjoyed the heck out of it. I really liked it. I mean, one of the reasons I got out was my wife, Randy. We weren't together at the time, but we spent a lot of time together when I was in college and stuff like that. So the 4 years I was gone, I mean, she was a big part of me wanting to come home. And then, yeah, I thought it was a way that was going to help pay for school or something like that, which I still haven't gone back and used. But when I joined up right out of when I was a year into college and decided it wasn't for me, that was one of the big factors, was, well, I get the GI Bill and I can go back to school at a later date. And then I kind of fell into the job I have now, and I enjoy it, and I'm doing it without the school. So for me, yeah, I wanted to come home. I wanted to be a part of agriculture. I just didn't know when that was going to be. So I extended my contract one time, and then when I got out of the military, I actually joined the National Guard unit out of Missoula, just to use up some of that time. I signed for 3 years, ended up doing 4. And then you always have that individual reserve time where they can call you back. So instead of going on IR, I just joined the Guard and finished out my time with the Missoula unit. So
Yeah. So I know you also been active in Farm Bureau. Tell us a little bit about your time you spent with Farm Bureau, and tell us what it's meant to you as a young farmer.
yeah. So I didn't know a lot about it when we got started in it. To be honest, we bought our place in 21. The guy that does our insurance, I told him we were buying this place, and he said, well, you got to buy this membership too. And I had no idea what it entailed. And lucky for me, actually kind of tied in with my professional life at work. Bought insurance through him. He was just a good friend with Farm Bureau. Knew there was the annual conference was coming up that fall, so I just signed up to do a booth at it just to kind of see what it was all about. Got kind of voluntold, missed a meeting at the local county level, and they told me I was the YF&R chair for our county, Northwest counties, which is fine. I was like, all right, let's run with it. That program had been kind of stagnant, not from bad people being in it. It was just we didn't have anyone that was really in it, and we didn't have a big following of young people. So that was a challenge, but it was a fun one. Now there's 2 people on the county side for us at YF&R. I got voluntold again. I missed another meeting, and now I'm vice president for our Northwest Counties chapter, which they asked me before the meeting. They knew I was going to be gone, but it's kind of funny that, not showing up can get you put in some spots too. So I try to be at everything we can. But YF&R was the biggest part of it for me, was just a place where we could get together as younger people, because there wasn't really that. And in my professional life, doing a producer meeting or something, and all these seasoned guys are coming in, that run 400 and 500 head, and then there's a guy like me that runs 30 or 40. It was intimidating to walk into that room for some of those people, and ask the questions when we brought in a speaker to talk on beef cattle nutrition or whatever it was. And I just kind of saw that gap, and that's where we started, was getting together with the YF&R group, trying to do a once a month type deal. And like I said, now there's 4 people that are on a committee, that are super. They work really good together. I've taken a back seat for sure and just let them kind of do what they want. But you talked about grassroots, and we were talking a little bit from here. Starting at the local level, I think has helped me be a better member for our YF&R. I'm the state chair too. So getting some things started at the Northwest Counties level, and then taking that to the state so we can replicate it. That's been awesome. Your question was how it's helped me as a person. I feel, my cup gets filled up when we're empowering or getting more engagement out of our younger producers, that I think have a pretty quiet voice. I mean, in our area anyway, they don't show up to the meetings a lot because time is their hottest commodity. They're trying to raise a family. They're going to get invited to all these meetings. They're wanting to be a part of the community, and it's hard to get them there. So just offering a spot where we can all come together and talk about something, engage, help them find their passion. Like I said, I was the only YF&R guy, and now there's 2 that, I probably talk to them on a weekly basis at Northwest Counties about something that they're wanting to do, or, hey, we want to try this, or, hey, can we talk about this at the next committee meeting? So it was cool to find people to kind of fill those places and really find out what they're passionate about too. So for me, it's been YF&R as far as like my Y in Farm Bureau. That's been a super awesome experience.
Well, if you look at the leadership organization, a big percentage of us started there. I started there. My dad took me to a meeting, and I came home chairman of the Young Farmer Committee at county level. And that's where and I didn't have any military background. I didn't have any leadership training, but the Young Farmer and Rancher program gave that training to me, and now I'm president of American Farm Bureau. So look out, Nick. You never know what you might do 30 years from now. So
yep.
Do you see the gratification people get after they get involved and maybe make a trip to Washington or go to a meeting and feel like they've accomplished something at the state capitol or something? Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah, even at the local level, this year in Puerto Rico, getting to see Mark Boyd, he's the one that got to come compete in the discussion meet for us. That was kind of full circle. He tried a few years, been on our state discussions, and then won it last year and got to go there. And just seeing that, what you get to experience there, more than the discussion meet, but he got to go. Getting to see Carly Johnson, she testified, I can't remember if it was House or Senate, for the grizzly bear problem. She was at this year's at Puerto Rico at American Farm Bureau too, as the Agriculture Excellence Award. I think I might have said that wrong, but Excellence in Agriculture. Her and her husband were there, and just getting to see that, like, she got to experience it a little bit different, but then now ends up in the Farm Bureau family. That is, she's actually my district leader, so she's my staffer that helps us out at Northwest Counties now. And she was probably involved with Farm Bureau, but now she's on the staff. So like seeing that kind of stuff is pretty cool. Just they get roped in and they get involved, and it just keeps going for them. At the state level or at the county level for us too, I had a guy that was, a little bit interested. They just moved in here and stuff. He threw some ideas out, and the YF&R committee is running with his ideas to go at farmers markets and advocate for, them direct selling their beef, or, here's the programs, how you get into that, or, handing out flyers to the other vendors that are at that Farm Bureau. That was he thought that was an easy audience to get in front of that maybe we don't always get to, because they're not production egg. A lot of times they're making, soap from goat milk, or, just different things like that, which they're part of egg, but they're in a different category than us. So we get in front of those different people, and that was all organic. The kid just said, we need to get in front of some of these different people at these farmers markets. And now every Friday, I think they're going to a different one and sitting at a booth, meeting people, networking, handing out brochures. So, I mean, to see that too, like he had an idea and then it turned into it, just getting to see, hey, that was kind of my idea. That's pretty cool. I think to get to watch that, to get to watch people sign up. Another guy, Buddy Chef, he's been on a few boards or been to a few meetings on some other organizations that I've been involved in. We're about the same age. We had a board member step down because they moved. We kind of put him in there in the interim. And he's probably the most proactive person on our board right now, still pretty young and motivated. And so that's been pretty cool to see him step in, and he'll get voted on our board this year at the annual meeting. It was just in our bylaws to have him step up. Everyone voted on it to have him in there. And he's been doing some of those Farm Bureau or farmers markets events, things like that. So yeah, they start because they have an idea, and then it just kind of grows into this thing, and there's a whole army of people waiting to help them, which is kind of fun to watch too. So.
Well, you're exactly right. Our organization, to me, our power and strength is with that county member, that grassroots member, and when they show up and voice their stories and their opinions and express their concerns about policy, that's when this organization is at its best. And to see them get that gratification, whether it be through policy or whether it be through business or making relationships with others that help the industry, it is really rewarding. I describe ourselves as a vehicle for farmers and ranchers to get done what they need to get done, keep our industry healthy for the future. And my job is to try to keep them engaged. And your job is to get them to join up. And it sounds like you're doing a great job. So thank you for that. Well, Nick, you got anything else you'd like to talk about? It might be cattle, it might be military, it might be Farm Bureau. Anything else you'd like to talk about?
I didn't mention my border collies. They're a big part of our rotational grazing. The story that I kind of tell people when I got started in them was trying to load some heifers by myself. And if I had a guy standing right here, this would have been done a long time ago. So I got some dogs. I can wait at the gate and send them out. They bring them in. We move pastures pretty easy. It's super low stress, and it's just, they're handy. They're a part of the family, and just really like having them around too. So I had a note to talk about them when you asked about our cattle and our horses, and I just didn't.
So we all go to Farm Bureau meetings as volunteers, and these meetings they come off without a hitch, but you and I know that things don't just happen without a lot of people working behind the scene. Tell us a little bit about the staff that supports you, because I can't say enough good things about the staff that supports me.
Yeah. When I kind of told you my background getting into Farm Bureau, it was from maybe missing a few meetings and getting volunteered for some positions, which I'm not complaining about. I love where I'm at. But without our staff, Sue Ann in particular, she's the one at the state level that helps me with a lot of YF&R things, or young farmers and ranchers. Kind of keeps me on course on what needs to get done for the year, what our book of work looks like, and keeps me out of the weeds on a lot of things that I'm like, man, I want to talk about this, or we got to do that. And she's like, let's work on this right now. So we get those things done. There's time to do those other things, but keeps me focused. Carly Johnson is our new district person. She's a staffer for Montana Farm Bureau, and she's been a huge asset taking over for Elena. Which you can call those guys and say, hey, I need some postcards for this, or hey, we're planning an event here, can you help me out with that, or has anyone else done it? And they get you what you need in a timely manner, and just keep everyone focused and get everything done that we maybe don't know how to do or don't have time to do. They're right there stepping up, getting it all done for us. So yeah, it goes off without a hitch because all the work they do in the background. So
yeah, we're very appreciative of that. But on the county, the state, and on the national level, we have unbelievable, dedicated, wonderful people that work for us, even the ones behind the scenes on this podcast. So I want to thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank you again for your service. And I hope that everyone out there will think during the month of November, the men and women that's made the sacrifices that allows us to have the freedoms that we have each and every day, and never, ever take it for granted, because freedom doesn't come free. We hope all of you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we both say God bless you too.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Farmside Chat. Please be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And while you're at it, take a minute to rate and review the podcast. This helps us continue to bring you farm fresh content that everyone can enjoy. Until next time, thank you and God bless you.